Okay. So where are we starting today?
Yeah. The things that kept unfolding for me yesterday were, still around those things that I resist. And a lot of them are, not allowing myself to see them fully, all aspects. And it was like I kept judging is that's not the word, but it kind of is when you boil it down. But when I started seeing the things that were irritating me totally different and learning from them more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the right words, but it was just like all these doors started opening up, and it's like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And it was like taking all these weights off my back. And it was like, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to carry that anymore. I don't have to be this way anymore.
Yeah.
I found it very freeing. It wasn't anything specific. I guess it was, around my business and around.
Well, and your roles that are changing, right?
Yeah. Well, and how I hold my energy, which I guess is really ultimately the roles, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
Step away from the role.
Step away from the role. I've had it. See, I have it on a Post-it that's been on my thing. Oh, every time I get tripped up, that's what I'm looking at. So, I can't tell you how many people I actually took a picture of it and sent it to this week.
Well, and I know before I was leaving, I was really, I was trying to, because Elise is watching the animals in the house and all this kind of stuff, and I kept wanting to sit there and go, okay, now you have to do this, and you have to do this, and at one point I felt like I was hearing myself, and I was like, you know what? She can figure it out. She's 23.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny.
And if she doesn't, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
And that was the best part. And so I was like, guess you'll figure it out. So this morning she's texting me going, how did you say to make dog food?
Oh, see, so here's the thing. This is what you might want to think about, because this is what I've done because of the supplements and stuff that I give my animals. I actually typed up the instructions for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the animals, and it's hanging up on the cabinet over the where I usually feed them. So this way, anybody can just come in and feed the animals. Here's what you do.
Well, I did that when we were going to Florida. And so the last thing I did was I put a folded piece of paper on the counter, and I said, well, this is what I typed up for Autumn.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to look at this, it's right here. And I just left it there. I wasn't like, do you see where I'm putting it? But Autumn never had to make dog food. Mm-hmm. I made it and I froze it. So all she had to do was defrost it. But so this is like, you know what? I could do that, but I'm not going to. Mm. You're here all week. What else you going to do? Yeah, you got some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep.
So she texted me this morning. She goes, are you up yet? I was like, yes. I said, what do you need? How do you make dog food? So they're waiting for their breakfast to come out of the oven.
Funny. Well, see, it's funny because you say that, and it was interesting because yesterday I went out for lunch and I ended up being out for 4 hours, right? And I left at 11:15. So I didn't feed my cats lunch. But see, the way I look at it at this point is, you know what? They can wait. It's not going to kill them if they miss a meal, right?
Right. And it's one meal in a series of.
But you know what? I was really happy. Brianna just took it upon herself and fed them.
That's success in my mind.
I know. I was like, yes.
Yep.
Because when I got back, I didn't even call her because, I just got wrapped up in what was going on. And then I was like, oh, well, either she fed them or she didn't. And now,
right.
I'll probably just wait till dinner if they haven't eaten or give them a snack. And I got in and she had fed them. And I was like, thank you. Yes. There is progress going on.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And it was funny because I told Frank, that I had just kind of walked away, and he goes, well, as long as the animals don't suffer. And I'm like, I think that they'll be fine.
Yeah, they're just not.
But it's so unlike him to, usually he's the one going, so they miss a meal. And here I am going, everybody will just figure it out. And him going, wait a minute. It's quite a role reversal.
Yep. Yeah, I'm done. You know what? I am done. And I've realized that, and that's just something that I've been having to look at in the last couple of days. I think it for the energy of class, like, it was really funny. So the funniest part was Sunday night, I was thinking, usually I have great big epiphanies during class, and it was really that easy that that didn't even really happen because it was waiting for yesterday, apparently. So I was like, but because things have resurfaced. Some things have resurfaced about getting pissy, about what my husband's not doing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yasmin and I had a good heart-to-heart about that because we had similar things in a very different context. But it made me sort of realize a bunch of things. And, one of them is I have to stop hoping. I have to stop hoping some things will change and just move on.
Right.
And whatever that looks like it can be anything. So
that sounds like more what I was talking about, what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Is my expectation or my judgment that something needs to change.
Yeah. Right. For the other person. Right?
Exactly.
And I'm just like, no, I just need to decide what needs to change for me.
Right.
And it'll figure itself out.
Right.
But the key,
in one way or the other.
Right. And the key really is to be to allow all possibility and not say, well, this has to be this way. To just say, you know what? It can be anything.
Right.
Which, as soon as I said that, it was just like all this, it just incredibly, it was just crazy because we were talking about that and it was just like, wow. And then all the visions that like things that I've had seen since like 2010. I mean, they all just started going blink, blink, blink. And it was just like, oh my God. And I couldn't even keep up with talking about it. And then, Yasmin was and it was pretty incredible. It is really like we're in this place now of anything goes. So it's important to be open to anything goes. Like, and that's part of why we're forcing ourselves to step away from the role, right? All the roles.
Oh, yeah.
Because for us to allow anything to happen is to allow ourselves to do anything, which means we can't limit ourselves into any role. Right.
Right. So, and that even goes all the way down to the role of being a human.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Which really includes the role of being a human.
Right, which I think, we were talking about last week about taking vitamins and things like that. That's part of that limitation of being human.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Yeah.
So it's just huge because.
That is huge. Boy, that feels good to put down.
It just has so many layers of, there's so much ripple effect from that.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't been able to get to this point of seeing it. Well, and it goes along with what you and I were texting. I think, was it even yesterday about that, the roles and like, because of my kids and like the weird sudden, like.
Oh yeah. Switching
roles and one being a little like jealous. It was just like so weird and and it's like, but that's it. If we let go of roles, we can take on any, but we don't have to take on any roles at all either.
Right. Which I think that's, when you talk about releasing roles, it's easy to say, okay, well, I'm not going to play this mother role, but then you pick up 2 or 3 others to take its place because you still have to function in some capacity. And that's the part that's really breaking the habit of, well, actually, no, you don't.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've been looking at in the past 24 hours is the spousal role. Like,
oh, well, yeah, that's clearly
so many layers that we hide from ourselves. Bless you. See, it's true.
Punctuated with a sneeze.
That's right. But
yeah, because I've been in the process of getting rid of that role for months.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's like there aren't even guidelines anymore.
Yeah.
For what a relationship looks like.
And the thing is, I keep on thinking that, and then it's like, oh nope, there was another layer that was hidden from view that was, embedded in there, and even little tiny things. And it's almost like that's what did come up in teaching class this weekend was get like pretty much purifying all the rest of the crumbs. Like it's time.
I like that, purifying it.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's not even a judgment of pure, unpure. It's just it's existing in its complete form. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And I left all my journals in the car. I have to put that in my phone.
I will write it down for us.
Yeah, I really like that. And maybe that's the only role that matters, is being that divine being, or being the wholeness, and that purifying that role. Oh, that feels good.
Yeah, because here's the thing, and this is what oh wow, this is starting to come together. So what started coming up and talking about all these different visions that I've had over the past 9 years, because I've put so many things on the shelf because there's no context, right? Because the mind wants to do context. And one of the things that we talked about a lot when I taught class this weekend was being able to know without definition.
Oh, yeah.
And being able to trust that. So of course, then what happens is, like, when all the stuff starts just pouring in yesterday, I'm like, well, I could barely keep up with it. It was like one of those things where, you sort of like the water is taking you down and you're trying to get air. It's just more and more. And I was just like, hold on, I just wait.
Yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But part of it has to do with this. To let go of the roles is that, right? So let me just give you an example that's coming to mind. So yeah, right, so there's one facet of me that remembers. Oh, where did this thing go? So all right, there's that life in Peru, right? There's the remembrance of being a part of the consciousness of Iris, the goddess Iris, the goddess of the rainbow, blah blah blah, right? There's and this is like stuff that I haven't even pulled out of the the toy box for a while.
Right.
And then there's the remembrance of being a part of the Mary consciousness and being a part of the goddess stuff, and god and goddess stuff in ancient Egypt, and then there's stuff around the twin flame, and then there's all this stuff, and it seems really disparate, right? There's also stuff of like the remembrance of creating the darkness, right? So all this stuff, and it's like all been collecting on the shelves, like my shot glasses over the years. And the key is this: until I stopped seeing each of those things as identities, right? Because I'm like, okay, all of that has to do also with collective consciousness, because it's not just me that's been part of the Mary consciousness. There's many of us, like you and many others that we know, right?
Right.
The same thing with Iris, or when we get to that God goddess thing, it's always more of a collective remembrance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've split ourselves even more, beyond that to carry on whatever theme. But then when you stop, because when you can look at it and say, okay, well, fine. Well, how does Iris connect to Mary? Because those are completely two different mythologies, right? And then how does this one connect to that? And how does even just that life in Peru connect to anything, and like all of this other stuff, right? Well, then you go, well, what if I just say to step away from the role is really stepping away from the identity?
Right.
And all you start doing is seeing the continuity of all the points.
Yeah.
So it's when we can step away from our roles completely, even as a human, right? To say, because that's even what I was saying to Yasmin is like, okay, well, you're looking at this, something that we were looking at. Like, you keep on looking at this and you're focusing so much on this other individual. When do you turn it around and start looking at yourself? When do you start looking at who you've been? And I said, and it's not important, but it is important, because the not important part is the identity part. The is important part is to recall that you are powerful, so powerful that you are these things.
Right. Right.
I said, and to take ownership of that and to remember it and allow it to be all of it, part of all of you, is what helps you to remember beyond the role, beyond the identity, that power for you to embody, right? To remember and embody. And we won't let ourselves do that unless we allow, remember, even the whole thing when that whole realization of the expansion of Trinity and everything else was that acceptance of that 50% of the darkness that we had to create for duality, right?
Right.
So it's like incorporating that even to without identity, without judgment, and just to say, look at how powerful I am to create this. Look at how powerful we are to have just created this entire multiverse of stories, right?
Right.
and like epic journeys and adventures.
Right. And the power that we've infused in a role.
Yes.
And then disseminated it out.
Yes. Yes. So when we can do that, then, and we can acknowledge that within ourselves without the identity of, oh, well, I'm so-and-so, right?
Right.
Because that's completely unimportant, because I'm so-and-so is all ego, no matter how sweet it comes across.
Yeah.
As soon as we say I am, it creates identity, which means it's all ego, and ego's not bad. And we had a good talk about that yesterday. It's like, it's not saying the ego is bad. It's recognizing it for what it creates and what it has created and what its role has been. And as we shift it to support this realignment, it's to reteach the ego on the unimportance of the roles and the identities, and really the importance of remembering that alignment of power in the divine sense of unconditional, like that unconditional love, but that infinite power of, I created from the void. I created this from the void,
It's almost like, and I'm thinking back to like the Bible and all the parables and all the it's like, it's not the story, it's important.
Right.
It was what the story was supposed to portray.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
It was the way we learned how to define things, right?
And it had to start at that elementary level, because we were just learning.
Well,
like the power we've given just that.
Right. Right. So now it's time to pull all that away to really, because for us to, oh God, that's so big. Oh my God, wait. It's coming again. For us to create fully this next version, to really step into it, into this new, whatever people want to call it, the new earth, but it's really not just the new earth, it's the new multiverse, because we're doing this across the multiverse, right? To do that is to wipe away all of the semantics of the parables, right? Yep. But it's so important to do that so that we can bring back, because otherwise it's like that whole, like you had said, if we never recognize it, like in duality, we're 50% dark as we are 50% light. We are, no matter what, never going to be whole, like be living in our whole and full consciousness as a divine being, if we deny ourselves that dark side.
Right.
Because it's when we incorporate it and allow it. So if we only say, I am this and I am not this, we are limiting ourselves to the role that this creates.
Right.
And not this creates.
Right.
So when we say I'm a healer, right? Because you hear this all the time, or I'm a light worker, like it sort of implies I'm not a dark worker, but you are. But we are,
Yeah.
And when we can, like, it's almost like when we do that and when we say, because, you know, we talk about that and we've talked about this, but it's like all of a sudden it just bam hit home yesterday, right? It's like, see, there's the yawn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking like I'm a human being.
Yeah, right. But you're not.
I know. Well, but if you choose to
You
only
are, you
examine
are,
those
and you're not.
pieces,
Yeah.
yeah,
The next step is the value of acknowledging the pieces that we created in duality and separation,
right,
and honoring their value, right, in their uniquities, right, in what we created with them, to now that we now just say, okay, now I'm going to take away all that categorization and say, how does this all connect together? Like, look at the bigger picture and the meaning of how we did this and what we did, and now it's time to shift it to this next evolution.
right.
But to do that is to wipe away all of the identities that we've created and the meanings behind them that are specific to the identity, to allow things to disseminate across everything.
It's almost like I can see it being allowing all the overlays to just reincorporate.
Yes, and it's funny you say that, because when we did our group thing on Sunday, the earth level, you know, group healing, so to speak, I saw all of these overlays, dimensions or whatever on earth, like just, it was like they were like, it was almost like jello. They were sort of wiggling, you know, like
Right.
they were like so close in frequency. You know how like it was like a visual of like notes, right, and frequency, on how when frequencies get close together, they start to waver before.
It's like they create their own,
like, yeah, resonance between each other, right?
right.
So that's what I was seeing. Wow. Yeah, so I was seeing it in a visual of the earth and all the dimensions, all the overlays that were just sort of like doing this, because it's really, that's why things feel so chaotic energetically, right?
Oh my gosh, that feels so good. Because it's like, I think that's, you know, with the bowls, think of like the bowls. And it's like,
and that's what they're helping
you
with.
play,
Uh-huh.
and it creates that third tone that create, oh my gosh, wow.
Right.
I mean, chills.
Yes.
Over.
So we're just really at that place, and that's why things feel so chaotic, because there's that.
Oh yeah, the wavering and
Yeah, and the thing is, if we just pull away, so in terms of how we talk about partitions, or the, you know, the slate, if we pull out all the partitions finally, or we allow them, or we recognize the fact that they are really not there, and that it's part of the stories, right? Because each dimension is a story of its own. It's a parable of its own, right? Each overlay is a parable or a story of its own, or a bunch of them of their own. If we can look at the whole, free of roles and separation, then that's how it's all just gonna bam come together. Yeah, so I saw, it was funny because that's what I saw the shaking, and then all of a sudden I saw a Merkaba just come and like overlay the whole thing, and then everything just went whoosh. It was really cool. Yeah,
nice.
So here's the verbiage that goes along with that visualization, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is that many don't realize it's not just Earth, because our dimensions here are so interspersed around the multiverse, and the multiverse has many others as well. Like, so it is all like inevitably and completely interconnected. There's no way to disconnect them. The thing is, you don't want to disconnect them. You just want to take out all those separations. Right. Oh, and yeah, because when we were out there doing that, I heard, when I was like looking at the shaking and then the Merkaba, and then I heard this. So that'll cause a little bit of chaos too.
Right. But it's that creative destruction, productive chaos, you know, whatever.
Right. And the realization is, does it really? Because when we take out the roles, because when we take out roles, we take out expectations, right? So if we stop saying, well, the fourth dimension does this,
right,
and the 10th dimension does this, well, then just saying that, in definition, that's an expectation, right?
Well, creation.
Yeah. So then when we like erase all of those partitions or those pretend partitions and allow it all to come back together, then we can see all of it. And by the way, we can see, so for example, one of the things that's the biggest joke that we talk about a lot, and we talked about it in Dallas at the retreat and at the class this weekend, is the whole mosquito tick thing, right?
Right.
People always ask, well, what's the purpose of mosquitoes and ticks? Like, everything else I can think of, like, there's definitely a purpose in the way we created the interrelation of the, of this existence. And I was like, I asked that once, and we were talking about and joking about it this weekend. I asked that once. Oh, there's the odd. And I kept on asking it till, or asking to get to have, or setting myself to have conscious clarity on it till I did. And what came to me is that the mosquitoes and ticks are actually a very small, tiny representation of their presence in the fairy realms that overlay us. But they only needed sort of like a placeholder here for what they're accomplishing there. So that's what they hit themselves as here.
Right.
And I still don't know the entire purpose, but I can feel it. And it's like, okay. Well, and it was funny because I remember you said after we were talking about that and you were thinking, oh God, then you start thinking, instead of like, if you replace fairy with mosquito, you think, fairy repellent.
Or a fairy zapper. Or a fairy swatter.
Right. But the thing is, so because we've created these partitions of separation that and amnesia, right? That we set up for these different, because we have presence in those realms too. But we don't ever see the whole of who we are until we see ourselves free of those roles and partitions and separations, right? Like we're all these different places, and the only way to see the holographic us, it made me think of, like, what came to me last night was, it was this morning, was in Lemuria, the very distinct memories I had from that when we were creating the heavier levels of separation, was where we started, is we had this really incredibly beautiful holographic DNA.
Right.
That wasn't just something that you could see here. It was like across different things. And then what we sort of did was not really eliminate those other parts of the DNA, but eliminated our ability to remember how to access them.
Yeah, it's almost like we flattened it.
Yeah.
Even though it's still but it's...
Right.
Yeah.
It's like taking a 3D image and just sketching it straight out on a piece of paper,
Right.
So, and that's what happens when we say, in anything. So it's at the very most elementary level when we say, I am this, right? I'm human. I am.
That just reinforces that.
Right. So when we say, I'm all of it, right? I am the dark worker as well as the light worker. I'm, I love that. That's my new term of the week, the dark worker.
That's right. That's right.
I am the God and the goddess. I am the human and I am the divine, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that feels so good to even just say it.
I know.
And
that's
so
relief.
Right. And so the key for us now is to get to this place of resolution within ourselves. That's what the whole stepping away from the role is. See, I'm looking at my Post-it note every time I start talking about step away from the role. Every time we come across something where even privately or secretly, we're saying to ourselves in our quietest voice, I have to do this to fulfill this role, right? I just have to do this little thing, right?
Right.
And of course, have to or should, that's all ego, right? Because that's all, right? But that falls into the role and the expectation, which goes back to what we have been talking about how, it's not good enough to be 95%. And then like the ego rationalizing, saying, oh, but I do all this other stuff, so I can stay in this role.
Right.
Because it's okay, because I'm 95% of the way doing this.
I've accommodated.
Yes. Yeah. And so again, I'm just going to accommodate this person. But then of course it goes to that place of, because it proves that I love them.
Right.
And then it proves that I'm worthy of being loved, right? Which goes back to the whole lack thing or whatever. Even just a little bit. So that's what we were seeing, is that purification of all these crumbs this weekend. And I think that's what I needed so that I could start seeing this, because then it was like, whoa, bam, 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 bam. You know, it's like popcorn. Right. Suddenly just like,
yeah, that's great.
You're waiting for the popcorn to pop, and then all of a sudden it's like everywhere.
Right.
So I guess today, whatever that is for us, to make sure that to allow ourselves and accept that, and allow ourselves to simultaneously see all of those roles that we have taken, right? And simultaneously free ourselves of them as an identity.
Yeah.
So taking all the best parts of them, or not even the best parts, all of them, because there is no best, is judgment.
Right.
Taking all of them and allowing them to be reassimilated and to stop existing as separate entities, separate stories, you know, separate factions of ourselves. You know, the dark is the light is the dark. There's no dark. And that's such a relief. It is almost like a huge relief. Like, oh, so much less energy to keep it all separated.
Right. To hold them in separation. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That feels so freeing.
It really does.
It's like we're finally remembering the definition of freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And to do that, like really freedom. Like,
oh, yeah.
And that goes back to pure authenticity, right? To that place of owning everything because it's all yours to own, right?
Yeah.
And so like it, and that includes, like I was saying, all the light and the darkness, all the parts of us that we have loved to despise, to abhor, you know, that we hold here and say, well, that can't be me, or this is all me except for that, or whatever, to say, you know, that's me too.
Right.
And what a beautiful story we've created with it. You know, like I was saying this weekend, it's like, well, what would Star Wars have been without Darth Vader? I'm just saying.
I know, and it's funny because that's all we could find on TV last night.
Oh, that's funny.
It was all the Star Wars stuff. And last night, the last thing I saw was the Sith one where Anakin becomes Darth Vader.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just like, there's that dark worker.
That dark workers, right? And we love them, right?
That's right.
I mean, I remember my youngest, Sierra, when she was a kid, she loved Darth Vader. She had one of those helmet things that had the mask things that had the thing voice talk to it. It was just so funny. She loved it. And my kids, they would always it was funny because my kids have always had that little dark like twinge to them where they're like, oh, it'd be cool to do this or whatever. So it's like a lot of us have that. Like we would, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't create it. Right. So we can look at a movie. We can look at a movie subjectively because we think, oh, the movie's not real.
Right.
And it's okay for me to create those characters and have this dark stuff go on and have this person kill that person or this person rape that person or be murdered or be, pillaged or stolen from or whatever. It's okay for me to write that in. And it's really funny how we have recreated that right in front of us, but we don't recognize that as part of our creation of like, well, guess what? That's a reminder that we created all of this.
Right.
All of it.
Right.
So it's seeing the whole thing to appreciate the big picture of, I've done it all. I've been all those roles. And now the roles are gone. Now the expectations are gone and the judgments around them are gone. It's all looking at the beauty of the full picture so that we can see it to shift it to the next thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's just tied up so neatly in a little bow right now.
Right.
Of course, 10 minutes after we get off, I'll be like, what was it we talked about?
Yeah, I put notes in my phone since I don't have my journal up here. Yeah. Oh, feels really good though.
It does. I'm going to put this on pause though because I need to pee before we do this. All right. There's also stuff that came in about twin flame, more clarity on that twin flame thing too. It's been incredible. We'll save that for another day.
Yeah. I think this is good for today.
Well, it actually falls into this stuff too, because I realized that there are roles we chose in doing that and in not doing that. Like we sort of talked about several weeks ago, but it was like an expounding on that. So, all right. Are we ready? All that.
All that.
Let that all come together.
Yep.
With ease and flow and fun.
Right.
Ready? come back from that. I started coming back several times, and it was like, no, wait, there's more.
No, I came back several times too.
Oh no, I like it out here. The more I stayed, the better it felt. There was immense pressure in the third eye from the ego in the beginning, going, what? What are we doing?
Right.
And I was just like, let's just sit with this. Let's just watch. And what came to mind was interesting. Now I understand why I watched this movie over the weekend. But I saw, one second. I saw Infinity War over the weekend.
Oh.
We rented it or whatever. And I have been going, why? Because I'm so done with Marvel movies and stuff. But the thing is, it was in many ways, I guess, disappointing at the human level when you watch it. Although I wasn't really disappointed. I was like, but there's something for me to get from this, but I'm not quite sure. And part of it was accepting the whole picture over really what we expect in roles, right? And that's really what it was about, because at the end, it ended in a very different way than people would expect. Not like the happy ending, so to speak, but it was a holistic kind of way of ending, you know, and it was, that was interesting. Anyway, so when I realized that too, like, it was funny, because it sort of get the ego like engaged in something, and right. Be across everything. And it was like, oh, I love this character and I love this character. And oh, wait, you know, and maybe I didn't love this character, but look at how like great it was in terms of like interacting with this character, you know, like, and it was like all of it. And I just watched it all just sort of like this big wave. It was almost like a big ocean wave. Just went, shh. It was like purifying. It was like purification of all of those partitions to be reassimilated. That was really nice. I could just see that's going to be huge this week.
Well, I remember last week when you were talking about aliens looking down and seeing people getting in their car and driving and then getting out and stuff like that. Well, it was similar to that, but it was like the roles were like the clothes in the closet. Mm-hmm. And it was like you could put this one on or you could put this one on, and then it was like, or you could just wear them all.
Or not.
Or not, yeah.
Or go naked.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome.
Oh, it really was. I saw a lot of individual people resisting incorporating roles in that they were still in judgment of. Mm-hmm. And it was like, you remember, I guess it was in Peter Pan when she sewed the shadow back on.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And it was like I kept seeing one person in particular, a client of mine, sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to sew this personality into me because I was so resistant of it.
That's funny. Yeah, I saw multiple people I knew looking at that going, something similar while we're out there. That was really amazing. Well, I'm so glad there was just such a trivial thing to talk about this week.
No kidding. Well, it was a good follow-on to last week.
Oh, it really was. Yeah. Plus, of course, I guess it's on the wake of having class this weekend, too, which is always a big, you know.
Well, we had the setup, and now we have the resolution.
And we have Shasta in 3 weeks. So
that's right.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Having a great week with this, and look forward to seeing you next week. Stop.